This example asks us to calculate the mean, median, and mode. As we go to do this, the first thing we're going to do is put our information in ascending order. Ascending order is from smallest to biggest. So we're looking at 1. And I often check off a number once I've used it so that I know I don't have to use it again. Then I look and I see I have 4. I have another 4. I have an 8. And a 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. So, first thing we're going to do is calculate the mean. To calculate the mean, and there's our symbol for mean, we're going to add everything together. So 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 8 plus 9, and divide it by the number of numbers we added. So we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 together, so we are going to divide by 5. When we go to do this, we get 5.2. Our next one is the median. Median is our middle number when we're in order from smallest to biggest. If there's an odd number, it'll be a number exact. If it's an even number, we will have to combine the two numbers together and divide by 2 because we need the halfway point between them. So if we take a look at our list, here is our list. One of the ways I do it is with my fingers. So these two go together, these two go together, leaves me with that 4 in the middle. So this 4 here would be our median. So under median, we can just put down 4. Our next one asks us for the mode. Mode is the number or numbers that occur the most. So if we look at this one, we have one number that occurs twice, that is the 4. Everybody else occurs only 1. So 4 occurs the most. As a result, 4 would be our mode. Last but not least is the range. Range is the largest minus the smallest. So if we look at this, we have 9 as our biggest number, 1 is our smallest. So 9 minus 1 equals 8. That range is not that there are 8 numbers, but that there are 8 spots on the number line between the smallest number and the biggest number. Here's another example asking us to find the mean, median, mode, and range. Again, we're going to write the numbers in ascending order, so from smallest to largest. So the smallest number I see is 13. Then we have 24, 35, 57, 68, and last but not least is 97. So there are our numbers from smallest to biggest. Our mean, there's our symbol for the mean. We are going to add them together. And we're going to take that and divide by the number of numbers we added. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to divide by 6. And when we go and do that, we get 49. Okay, median. Recall median is our middle number in our list when ordered from smallest to largest. So if we look at it, these two go together, these two go together. These two go together, which means that our median is going to happen between these two numbers. It's going to happen right there. As a result, we're going to take these two and use them to help us find our median. So for our median, we're going to add those two numbers together. We're going to divide it by 2. So we're looking for the halfway point between the two numbers. And when we do that, we get 46. As our answer. In this case, Looking at our numbers, there is no number that repeats or no number that happens more often than others, which means that we have no mode. And that is possible. Remember, mode is a number that repeats the most often within the data. Lastly, we have the range. Range is our largest minus our smallest. So looking at it, our largest number is 97. Our smallest is 13. 97 minus 13 is 84. Now, we weren't dealing with 84 numbers, so if we look at our list, there's definitely not 84 numbers there. But what this 84 tells us is that we are looking at there being 84 spots on the number line between the smallest number and the largest number. This example asks us to find the mean, median, and standard deviation using the graphing calculator. You can only find the standard deviation using the graphing calculator, and you can only find the mode by hand. The first thing we're going to do with our calculator is we're going to hit the Stat button, and then we're going to hit Enter under Edit, and you're going to put this list of numbers into your L1, hitting Enter after you've put in the number. So 68, and then hit Enter. And you continue doing that through the entire list. Once you've done that, we're now going to get the calculator to calculate for us this X. With the bar across it is how the calculator shows the mean. This is a symbol that we use when we write the mean. So we're going to hit the Stat button. We're then going to go sideways to calculate, and we want the very first option, the 1-var stats. At this stage now, for our list, we want L1. In this case, we have everything in one column, so we're going to leave our frequency list blank, and then we're going to go down to calculate and hit Enter. And it calculates and comes up with our answers. So there's our very first one, our mean at 67.375. Okay. Our standard deviation. If we look at our symbols, there's a standard deviation symbol right there. So there's our standard deviation. We write our standard deviation to 2 decimal places. Very rarely does it tell us where to round them to, so we will just write them to 2 decimal places. So for our standard deviation, we get 16.35. And then the last thing it's asking us for is the median. So the MED here is what shows on the calculator. That stands for median. And in order to find our median, we're going to hit our down arrow until it appears. And there it is, MED 71.5. Mrs. Summer gave a worksheet out of 10. The marks for her class of 30 students were as follows. We have a couple of options on how we can do this. So one option is we could put all of these numbers into L1, just like we did in the last example, and calculate the mean, median, and standard deviation. The other option we could do is by making what's called a frequency table and putting that into our calculator. And that is the option we are going to go with. So as we go to do this, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the value, so what the different numbers are. In this column, we're then going to say how many times each of them happens in this one. So if I look at my table, the smallest number I see is 0. I don't see a 1. I don't see a 2. And there's a 3, 4, 5. Yep, there's a 6. So I see a 7, an 8, 9, and 10. So there's all our different number choices. Next, we're going to fill in our frequency. I tend to put a ticky for each number, and then a check mark beside the number in the table to show that I know that I've done that number, and if I lose my place, I know what I've done and what I haven't. Okay, so then I have 2 7s, and we can continue through our table. Okay. When I see something that happens 5 times, you can either put another ticky here or you can put a line through them and group them in groups of 5, which is what I tend to do for easy counting. Oops. Is that 9? There we go. 7. Another 9. Already counted that 9. There's our 7. Okay, so now that we have counted for how many tickies, we're now just going to add our ticky marks together, give us a sum total. So we have 2, 2, 1, 3, 2, 6, 4, 5, and 5. So now as we go to put this into our calculator, the value is going to go into our L1, the frequency is going to go into our L2. So the same, getting there the same way we did before for the last example. We're going to hit stat and enter, and we get our L1 and L2. We're then going to put our numbers in, making sure to hit enter after every number. So we've done that for our L1, then sideways, and put in our L2. Okay. At this stage now, we're going to do something slightly different as we go to do our calculation. We're still going to start with the stat button. We're still going to go sideways and take the first option. List is still going to be our L1, but now we have numbers as our frequency. So for our frequency list, we want to tell it to use the L2 column. If we look at our calculator down here in blue, right above our 2 button, is L2. The blue means we need to hit the second first. So to get that L2 to appear, we're going to hit the second button, and then we're going to hit our 2. And if you look at the screen here, we now have L2 in. So what we have told the calculator is to use L1 and L2 to do its calculations. We're going to go down and hit calculate, and there's our answers. So, very first one is our mean. So we're looking at 6.87. Our standard deviation's right here. So we have 2.72. And then recall for our median, we need to do the down arrow until we see the MED. There's our MED with a value of 7. So those are the ones that we can get with our calculator. Then we're looking at mode. Mode, remember, was the number that happens the most often. This list here tells us how many times each of these guys happen. So if we look at it, with 6 is our biggest number, that 6 means 7 happened 6 times. So that would mean that our mode is 7. This example asks us to examine tables below and asks which appears to have the data with more spread. Now, it's 2 tables. Here's where our tables separate. Now, remember, as they're more spread out, that would mean that there is more information near the outside edges and less near the middle. So if I look at the middle, comparing the middle section of these 2, this looks like it has less values than this one does. This also looks like it has more values on the outside edges than this one does. So that would mean we have more values on the outside, less on the inside, in the middle, which would be more spread out. Here we have more information right around the middle, less on the outside, which would be less spread out. So it looks like set A is more spread out. It then asks us to predict which has the greatest standard deviation. Now, if we think about our standard deviations, under the definitions for standard deviation, it does say that the greater the standard deviation, the more spread out the information is. The smaller the standard deviation, the less spread out it is. So if we're looking for the greatest, that would be the one that's more spread out. And we've already said that we think that set A is more spread out. What I would like you to do at this stage is I would like you to put the value in L1 and the frequency in L2 for data set A. Go through and calculate your mean and your standard deviation. Once you have those values, I want you to go to your set B, put your values into L1, your frequency into L2, and go through and calculate the set of information for set B. And once you've done those two, decide which one does indeed have the bigger standard deviation. So at this point, I want you to pause the video and go through and do those calculations. So here are the answers. We're looking at 3 and 1.37 for data set A. We're looking at a mean of 3 for B and 1.05 for standard deviation. So as we go to compare it, this has a smaller standard deviation, which means it's less spread out. This one has a bigger standard deviation, which means it is indeed more spread out. So set A is more spread out.